am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.
Hello there, Price of Reason here with a series review. In 2021, when HBO Max had greenlit an animated origin story series for the character of Velma from Scooby-Doo, many people were surprised, myself included. Even more baffling, though, was the announcement that Mindy Kaling would be writing, producing, and starring in it as well. Now, to be honest, I am aware that at least some people like Mindy Kaling, from her time on The Office and later from her own show, but I've never been a huge fan of her brand of, comedy. For me, she's at best a decent enough actress when starring alongside more talented people like Steve Carell. But if people like her personality and humor, that's perfectly fine, I guess. Still, while I couldn't see the value of a show focusing on Velma, as a kid growing up watching Scooby-Doo, if there was some modern animated version of it, I'd probably watch it for some good old-fashioned nostalgia. Unfortunately, as time went by and more information surfaced about Mindy Kaling's Velma show, it became clear that it wasn't going to honor the Scooby-Doo property that it was based upon, but rather it would both mock it and, reimagine it for modern audiences at the same time. So basically, it was going to be like Disney's She-Hulk Attorney at Law, but with Scooby-Doo. Even weirder though, the show was going to have diverse versions of the teens from the Scooby-Doo show, but Scooby-Doo wouldn't actually appear in it. To make matters worse, as we got closer to the series release, the trailer suggested that this show would be some type of middle finger to anybody who likes the characters of the original show, which is why the trailers were heavily ratioed on YouTube. So much so that Warner Bros. Discovery locked the comment section on their YouTube channel so people wouldn't be able to speak negatively about them. Because there's nothing that's more inviting to potential viewers than to not let them react to a trailer. Anyhow, even though none of this seemed especially promising, I decided to reserve my judgment until seeing the final product, but now that I've watched episodes 1 and 2 of Velma on HBO Max, I can confirm this show is a disaster of epic proportions. While I don't think that anything I say will really be able to convey how bad this show is, I will do my best to describe it, and I'll start with the main characters. Velma is a South Asian teen who lives with her father. Her mom has mysteriously disappeared at some point, and while she goes missing, her father, who is a loser, gets a waitress pregnant. Daphne is Velma's former best friend and current nemesis. In this show, she's Asian, but she was adopted and raised by two non-Asian women who are married to each other, but they're also police officers that are partners on the job. In her spare time, Daphne is a crappy person that also sells drugs. Fred is Daphne's boyfriend, and he's a rich, entitled Caucasian male that acts like an istinophobe, a jerk, and a beta male, all at the same time because, of course, he does. There's also a running gag about how Fred has a small Johnson, too. Yes, that's the level of humor here on this show. Rounding off the main characters is Shaggy, who on this show for some reason is called by his real name, Norville. As opposed to the original laid-back, easygoing, and amusing Shaggy, this character is more snooty and weird, and he also has a crush on Velma because, of course he does. As far as plot goes, and I use the term plot loosely here, it goes something like this. In episode 1, there are a few girls that turn up dead with missing brains, and for some reason, Velma is initially the main suspect in the murder. After going through a few suspects though, Velma ultimately determines that Fred is actually the killer, and not her. By the end of the first episode, Daphne's police officer lover moms end up shooting Fred in the kneecaps and arresting him. This first episode also includes several unfunny and bizarre scenes such as teenage girls acting like strange pervs in the shower, teenage girls making fun of a friend who was murdered at her own funeral, Velma dressing in a more appealing way for no apparent reason but then wearing her ugly sweater again shortly after, Velma hallucinating that she's seeing monsters, Shaggy confessing his love for Velma, after which she laughs at him. Oh, and Daphne trying to get busy with Fred, who rejects her because he's a sissy. And all of this was just in episode 1. In episode 2, there's a murder trial for Fred, and Velma's father, who also happens to be an attorney, decides to represent him because Fred's parents are rich, and they said they would pay him a lot of money. Ultimately, though, due to Fred being such an idiot, he's found guilty and goes to jail. During this episode, Velma also helps Daphne sell drugs because she wants her to steal the police file about her mother's disappearance. In a strange twist, Daphne ends up falling in love with Velma, and they make out because, of course they do. Fake Shaggy tries to impress Velma by catching a criminal, but then he sees her making out with Daphne and feels embarrassed. At the end of the episode, Fred shares a jail cell with the same criminal that Fake Shaggy helped apprehend. Also in this episode, people think that Fred is just like the leader of Germany during World War II, and Velma's father tries to buy drugs from her because, of course he does. As bad as I thought this show was going to be, it managed to somehow be much worse than I had anticipated. And now I will try to pinpoint the 4 things that made this show so terrible. Number 1, the humor. Taking a nostalgic IP and poking fun at it is an approach that can actually work if handled by people that actually care about the original property. A recent example I can think of is Andy Samberg's Chip and Dale movie that, while not spectacular, never felt like it hated the original series. In this case, though, I feel like the IP is more of a vehicle for Mindy Kaling's brand of, humor, rather than anything with actual merit. And here's the thing with humor. If you don't know how to do it properly, and if it's not funny, it can just come off as both mean-spirited and cringy, and that is exactly what we have here with Velma. Without exaggerating, I don't think I laughed once during the 2 episodes, and I think it was supposed to be more adult humor, targeted for people in my age group. So if I didn't think it was funny, I think it's not a very good sign for the show. Number 2, agenda-driven. Once again, we see another Hollywood celebrity vanity project seemingly made for the sole purpose of pushing trendy modern-day messages. Every male character on this show is either a loser, a bum, or an istophobe jerk with a tiny Johnson. Now, you could argue that Daphne was also made to look bad with the drugs, but ultimately she redeems herself and then makes out with Velma, so she's in the clear. And the amount of time that Fred's skin color and privilege is mentioned just feels both bitter and unfunny. I realize that some of these characters were rather generic in the original show, playing second fiddle to an animated dog, but they were at least likable. The constant need to deconstruct and trash nostalgic legacy characters is so lame at this point. People have enough on their mind and they just want to be entertained, and I wonder how many more failed projects like this will have to happen until these pompous Hollywood celebs will finally get the message. Also, while I genuinely don't care what people's personal preferences are when it comes to their partners, Hollywood's ongoing obsession to make so many characters, including legacy ones, suddenly alphabet people, is just tiresome at this point. The fact that you can rewrite them this way doesn't mean you should rewrite them this way. If this type of character is so important to your story, you could always just introduce a character like this into the fold without having to reimagine the legacy ones, especially in this case where it feels like it's just out of left field. Like it was written by a few weirdo Twitter stans with a bunch of hashtags in their bio. Number 3, format. The original show had a mystery in every self-contained episode, and I think that episode structure worked best. This seasonal arc of murders seems really dumb to me, and until now, it just doesn't seem like Mindy Kaling is a good enough writer to make it work. So not only do her spiteful and bitter jokes fall flat, she can't even tell a decent story. Number 4, demographic. Just as I recently felt watching She-Hulk on Disney+, I couldn't stop thinking to myself, who is this show made for? Are kids supposed to watch it? I hope not, because it's a terrible show for kids, as opposed to the original, which was great for kids. So is it supposed to be for adults? Are grown men supposed to watch and enjoy this? Because I don't think they will, unless maybe they have a YouTube channel and they want to post reviews about crappy shows. Is this another show for single middle-aged women like She-Hulk? Because most people didn't actually watch that show, and I think that they probably won't go out of their way to watch this one either. At the end of the day, this Velma show is basically made by Mindy Kaling for Mindy Kaling, and maybe a few of her colleagues and friends. But there's really no way around it. This show is a huge stinker. It's one of the worst shows that I've seen in a while, and I'm genuinely surprised that with all of his tax write-off cancellations, Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav somehow agreed to release this. Perhaps Mindy Kaling had a deal in place that wouldn't allow him to scrap it. Otherwise, I can't think of one reason why he would allow this show to air. It's just another case of IP hijacking and abuse to push very specific agendas while attacking certain groups of viewers that may have actually liked this IP. In my opinion, it's the worst Hollywood has to offer these days, and I sincerely hope that Warner Brothers Discovery hears so many complaints about it that they will seriously reconsider if ever to release another project like it in the future. What did you think about Mindy Kaling's Velma? Did you love it? Feel free to let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and also clicking on that wonderful notification bell. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.